You're listening to the Morphology Podcast. Thanks for tuning in to the Morphology Podcast, aka Murph here to share interviews about biking experiences from cyclists who have pedaled to places all over. Each week we will get to know new people and explore new destinations to ride your bike. As you listen to these adventures, you may wonder, why haven't I done that yet? Well, on the show today is Kasey Clark. Kasey, a cyclist and organic farmer, is on to talk about how he decided to ride every gravel mile in Loudoun County, Virginia, to raise money for an organization called America's Routes. His one-day journey took him on some of the nation's oldest and most beautiful rural roads. There's a movie about this event on YouTube, and he even made it onto NPR. In addition to riding some epic adventures, Kasey saw a need for a bike club made up of all abilities of cyclists with a focus on fun. From this need, Kasey created VeloPigs. With over 1,300 members, this club meets weekly for gravel rides, socializing, and maybe a beer or two. So here's Kasey to tell us more. Okay, well, on the show today we have Kasey. Hey, Kasey.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm good. I tracked you down from seeing some really cool posts on social media, and you are the founder of, it looks like a pretty cool bicycle club. So I'm really happy to have you on the show and to talk to you more about it.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me on.
You bet. Before we get into talking about VeloPigs, will you tell the listeners a little bit about where you live and what cycling is like there?
Sure. I live in Northern Virginia, about an hour and a half west of Washington, D.C.
Oh, okay.
In Loudoun County. Loudoun County is becoming a bit of a known entity in gravel because of its 300 miles of historic gravel roads that date back to the early 1700s.
Oh, nice.
And I know 300 miles doesn't sound much to a lot of people in the country, but we're, being so close to Washington, D.C., to have such a network of gravel roads in such a major metropolitan area, it's really a special thing to have.
Yeah.
So, and with, the booming gravel, I mean, we'll go out on these country roads out here and you'll see license plates from all over the East Coast parked in school parking lots and, the churches and stuff as people, make a pilgrimage out here, so to speak, in order to ride the gravel roads out here.
Mm-hmm. I was in that area this past fall. We didn't do very much gravel because we were actually on the trails, but we did a, Pittsburgh to DC trip using that trail system. And so I would guess, cycling is a big deal on all different types of terrain in that area.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. There's a very strong mountain bike scene in the DC area and Virginia as a whole. Road riding's pretty popular. We've got some pretty big races down here. But again, the gravel is really exploding here.
Mm-hmm.
I can leave my house. I live on a farm. And I can, out in the country, I can leave my house on a farm and get on a gravel road and actually ride all dirt roads to the CNO, which I can then ride into the heart of Georgetown in the middle of DC and not touch pavement. So again, the idea that I could do this, from the country and arrive into our nation's capital on gravel and dirt and mixed surface it's an incredible opportunity. And I think, I'm not going to necessarily say pioneers of gravel, but a lot of the road riders out here that were riding gravel roads, because that's what they're here before gravel took off, knew about this little secret. And now that gravel riding as a segment has taken off, people are really getting the secret's out, so to speak.
Yeah.
and so it's really booming out here. I'll go out on local roads that 5 years ago I would know everybody I passed. Now I don't know most people that we pass, which is
wow.
You can make arguments for and against all of it, but more people on bikes is great.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And I need to put a pin in you talking about how great the gravel is, because that's one of my questions that I'm going to ask you in a few minutes is based on a YouTube video I watched of you biking, I think it was every single gravel road, but I want to, in your county, but I want to ask you that in a second. So hold a pin in
Sure.
that, okay?
Sure.
Okay. So, you've mentioned about gravel. So I'm assuming that you spend most of your time when you're on a bike on gravel, but you also dabble in bike packing, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily. I mean, yes, bike packing, but more so, I would say bike travel.
Oh, okay.
Um, on bike packing setups. My wife and I met overseas when we were both serving in the Peace Corps, and through the Peace Corps, we've learned to love, traveling off the beaten path, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do travel, we load up bikes and we tour country on bicycles.
Nice.
Um, so there is a huge bike packing scene in Virginia. I don't take a lot of advantage from that because of that, because I do work as a farmer and I don't really care to camp in the winter.
Mm.
So I minimize it around here. But typically in January, my wife and I fly overseas for bike packing type trips. We were in Sri Lanka as the world started shutting down for COVID in 2020.
Mm.
The year before, we were in Malawi and Southern Africa. We just canceled our trip to Rwanda, but I think we're going to scramble and get something going to Costa Rica next month. So,
Oh my gosh, those are
yeah,
some pretty cool places.
yeah.
We could
So
have
we're lucky.
several episodes just talking about those trips.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We really enjoy doing it, and the experience is incredible.
Yeah.
And it's actually cheaper than you would think.
Really? All right.
Oh yeah. We've gotten pretty good at keeping it cheap.
Well, I was going to say, as many times as you've done it, you're probably a pretty well-oiled machine as far as, where to spend money, how to spend money, and how to, probably pack a little bit lighter than the average tourist.
Yeah, I think we've managed to find a few tricks to make it easier for ourselves, but
Yeah.
it's all the stuff that, the bike packers out there, they know just as well as we do.
Sure.
Just the planning is a little more cumbersome when you are traveling overseas.
Yeah.
And that's why we're not doing Rwanda at this point. Is Rwanda is trying to do the right thing with all the testing they require, but we would be needing to test every 3 days.
Mm.
And when we're out on a bike, the idea of trying to scramble 100 miles to get somewhere to test, it would change the trip. So
Right.
we just we'll bump that to another year.
Right. So, we mentioned gravel, of course, and then bike packing and you going overseas. But did I also see that you race single speed?
Yeah, I've been racing mountain bikes since I was in middle school, so since 1989 or so. And as an adult, I joined the Peace Corps. When I got back, I wanted a new bike, but I didn't have any money. And this was in the late 90s. A single speed was a cheap option. I was living in Mississippi, so not many hills. So I thought, I'll buy a single speed. And I very quickly enjoyed that as my primary type of mountain biking.
Mm.
And yeah, so I've raced single speed mountain bikes when I do race ever since. And I've had some success with that.
Dang, that sounds
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah.
Okay, so then we put all this together, all of your love of biking, and somehow you decided to start a new club. So give us the story on how that came to be. A quick interruption to tell you this week's podcast is sponsored by Lizard Lips Lip Balm. These great lip balms contain natural ingredients, come in a variety of flavors, and you can choose certified organic or balms with sun protection. Check it out at lizardlips.net. Now back to the show.
Sure. I've always really enjoyed cycling, and what I really like about riding bikes is obviously the riding bikes and getting out there and seeing things and just the fun and the joy of being on a bike. But it's always been about sharing it with other people. And, growing up as, you go out there riding with your friends, and the thing that you remember is not necessarily the bike rides you did by yourself, but it's the time you rode it with your friend and found a new spot and things like that. So the nature of my wife's and my job is we tend to pick up and move every few years. We build farms for nonprofits. So that puts us in a rural area, often with people we don't know. It's hard to meet people. So when we moved to Northern Virginia, I decided that I would be more proactive about meeting people. And I approached a bike shop, and asked if I could host their shop rides, which they didn't have. And there was already the seed of the VeloPigs from as a few of my friends that we used to mountain bike together and drink beer in the parking lot that all rode for different teams. So we started, there was like 4 of us in Connecticut. And when I moved down here, I was the only one down here. Kind of fibbed a bit to the bike shop and said I have a bike club. Sold a few T-shirts and got a few people interested, and we started doing weekly rides. And that's how it started. And the idea was to basically have a group ride that all riders of all abilities could come out, and they're no drop, and people are welcome and have fun. I've been on too many group rides for other bike shops or club rides where it's just very type A aggro, sprint the whole time, and you get done and everybody loads up the car and drives away. So we call ourselves a beer and bicycle social club with an emphasis on the social aspect. And it's done really well. We do weekly gravel rides every week. We've just paused for about a month this winter, but we consistently have about 50 people show up, and we split those rides into the party pace, obviously, a business casual pace, and a pace that we call the business, which is, the real fast guys. Three different routes. We tend to all finish at the same time and share a beer at the back of the shop when we're done.
Wow. So it's definitely, the love of cycling, but the sense of community that you're creating by, when you have that many people show up, I'm guessing, there's new people and people that have been there a while. So I can just imagine that post, that beer in the parking lot where people are talking biking, but probably becoming friends.
Oh yeah, there's definitely friend group has formed very quickly amongst many of us.
Yeah.
And, it's humbling that it's growing, but at the same time, it's kind of odd when I show up to lead the rides or organize the rides. And I would say 90% of the people there, I don't even recognize, let alone know their names.
Oh,
so, wow. So we're slowly working on that and figuring out how to grow and make sure it still has that feel of a small friendly club,
Yeah. So if somebody's actually in the Virginia area, is there a way for them to either find out more about your club, like through the bike shop, or can they come for a ride?
Well, they can always show up to the bike shop, which is Plum Grove Cyclery in Leesburg. But we have a VeloPigs group Facebook page that you can find on Facebook, or they can visit velopigs.org, which is our website. However, the most up-to-date is the Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
And then do you typically post your routes ahead of time, or is it once you show up, you say, here are 3 options, go at whatever pace is comfortable for you?
No, we post the routes. It used to be show up and we'll go for a ride, but people being people, every time, we'd say that, and then for the next week, I'm fielding questions about how long is it going to be, what's the elevation.
Right.
It became easier to build a ride with GPS library, which we have about 50 routes in there now. And basically on the Thursday or the Friday before the ride, I'll say, here's today's routes, and I'll post them up, and people can visit our page and download it to their machines and go from there.
Nice. So. And I don't know if I could actually explain what Iowa gravel is like, because that's where I live, but it's really, it's such a mixture, because sometimes, there's enough traffic with vehicles and farm equipment that if you get in the right line, you really don't have any gravel. But then all of a sudden, the graders will come through, and then you're literally, kind of floating over rocks, big rocks. But so what is the gravel like there?
That's exactly how I would describe the gravel around here as well. Yeah. I went to school in Vermont, and I go up to Vermont and race every so often, and you hear a lot about Vermont gravel around here. And that's probably my favorite place to ride gravel. I really like the class 4 roads, but the gravel up there it shouldn't be called gravel. It should be called dirt roads. They're hard packed dirt and they're fast.
Yeah.
Out here where we're riding, it's very loose. If you're turning into a tight corner or anything like that, there's a good chance you'll lose traction and wash out. So yeah. And again, if the graders go through, it's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
It's really hard to keep control of the bike. So yeah, it's the conditions change quite a bit.
Yeah.
So
that's where tire pressure becomes the golden tool.
It definitely does. Yeah, definitely. It's a lot like we make the comparisons. You hear about East Coast ice with skiers and snowboarders. So East Coast gravel typically is chunkier and less predictable.
Yeah.
And it builds up your technical skills pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of technical skills, I know that you have been on some epic bike rides based on your social media. And the one that I saw, I watched a YouTube, was is it the Loudoun or Loudoun?
Loudoun, that's the
Okay,
county, yeah.
so the Loudoun Rambler, where you decided to ride every single gravel road in the county and then also use it as a fundraiser. So can you tell us a little bit about that ride?
Sure. This happened last October. So a lot of the races I was planning on doing in 2020, obviously, I shouldn't say a lot, all the races that we all planned to do in 2020
Yeah.
were canceled. And I just wanted a challenge for myself. And so I was out doing I decided to do a gravel century, and I was just thinking while I was riding. And I wondered if I could finish all the roads in a day. So I called up a friend of mine that works with an organization called America's Roots, which is working to get these roads on the National Historic Register. So I called them up and asked how many actual gravel miles there were in Loudoun County, and that number was just under 300 miles. And I said, I've got an idea. Maybe I'll try ride all of those. So, he thought that was a neat idea and didn't put much thought to that. But I basically said to him, like, I think we could do it as a fundraiser and get some of the VeloPigs excited about it and spread it out to the other cycle clubs. We've got a club out here called the Bluemont Connection, which is a pretty influential club in DC as far as gravel riding. So we put the word out to all the clubs that I was going to do this. And would you, send whatever you think's fair into America's Roots as a fundraiser. So we were able to raise $8,000 or just under $8,000 for a single day ride, a single person, single day ride, almost entirely from the cycling community. And that money went towards the America's Roots organization, which is trying to preserve those roads by getting it listed on the National Historic Register. There's a lot of development out here, so that's what they're fighting against. And to be honest, I did not do every mile of that because I made a wrong turn at like 2 a.m.
Oh, no.
So when I got back, instead of having 300 miles, which I was going for the triple century, I thought would be fun. When I finished, I was at 284, but I wasn't going to turn around and ride 60 miles to get that those missing miles.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and you're not telling the listeners that you did that 284 miles in just over 23 hours. So you were on your bike for almost a full day.
Yeah. And I'll brag on myself a little bit, but it was also about 24,000 feet of elevation as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it was a lot. It was a lot of fun, and I wouldn't have been able to do that except for our local cycling community. I started at 6 a.m, and a good friend of mine turned up. I didn't know he was coming, but he was I left from my farm, showed up at 6 a.m. There was a photographer there, and he rode the first 60 miles with me and basically handed me off to another group of riders.
Oh, nice.
Who handed me off to another group of riders. So the first 200 miles, I wasn't alone. I was talking and chatting with people the entire way. It wasn't self-supported. I made a point to not say it was self-support because I didn't want to say no if somebody showed up with a cup of coffee in the middle of the night.
Right.
But at about midnight, that's when I was finally on my own. I shouldn't say finally on my own, but I was on my own through the night. This was a Halloween night. So I really like night riding and being on my own in the middle of the night after riding. It was a neat experience. There's a lot of bike pack racers, especially, that I'm really impressed by, and I wanted to see what it felt like to ride those kind of miles for that kind of distance and see how I'd react with that kind of distance in my legs and lack of sleep, and see how that was. So it was a neat experience.
Yeah. And what's the name of your YouTube video so that listeners can go check it out?
I think you can find it by looking up the Loudoun Rambler.
Okay. And that
should come up on YouTube, and that's produced by America's Roots, and roots spelled as in the auto root, not tree root.
Okay, got it. And Loudoun is spelled Loudoun, correct?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
It is. Yep.
Cool. Well,
yeah.
I did watch it. I watched you, do the ride and was so impressed. Like when you finished it, you did not look like a man who had just been riding for 23 hours. Like,
Oh, thank you.
you were
Yeah.
completely coherent. You could stand up on your own. I was just really,
Yeah.
really impressed with the whole. And to now know that you were able to raise almost $8,000 is really impressive.
Yeah. It was a learning experience for
Yeah.
myself, and quite humbling to see the support from the community.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if it towards the end, actually the beginning of the video and at the end, you see my wife in there. It was neat to do something that she actually was impressed by. I do all these bike things, and she's like, "Oh, that's nice. That's fun. Good for you." But when she realized that she got up with me at 4:30 in the morning and had gone to bed and was up, and I pulled in, and had been riding the whole time, it was, and she came out and saw me on course at one point to bring
Yeah.
me coffee. But it was neat to see her reaction. And my parents, who have never really understood my fascination with cycling, heard it was on NPR, so they heard that. So it was neat for my parents to hear that.
Oh, cool.
Something I've been passionate about, that they saw other people other people are impressed by it. So all of a sudden they think it's impressive. So that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
fun little bit of validation. Yeah.
And do you think you have interest to go back and do it again?
I don't know if I would definitely those distances.
Yeah.
And that kind of challenge. I don't know if I would do the same roads again.
Mm-hmm.
In that time. If there was somebody that really wanted to do it and wanted company, maybe I would do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would shoot for that myself just to do.
Sure. Yeah.
I did with the VeloPigs. I put an event together on Halloween night, which was the anniversary this year. We called it Oink at the Moon. And that was a nighttime gravel century. We had a century loop and a metric century loop.
Oh.
And we had, I think, maybe 35, 40 people showed up for that, to ride 100 miles into gravel in the dark.
In the dark.
And it was raining. So, these were diehard people showed up for that. It was very successful. And that was basically because of I was inspired by the camaraderie I had on that ride,
Mm-hmm.
and the fun I had riding for that long in the dark. And so I invited people out, and we got quite a few people out. And I think it'll end up being an annual VeloPigs event that we'll host an Oink at the Moon night gravel century. So,
I love that idea.
yeah.
Well, and that brings me to my next question. I'm assuming you probably had at least a couple races that you did in 2021. Any highlights that you want to share?
I've never gotten on the podium for a gravel race before. Usually mass start.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these gravel races now are starting to do categories. So I was able, because of the category and it breaking down to a little smaller, I guess the challenge and sheer numbers was a bit easier. So I was able to get on the podium for a race called the Dirty Kitten in the single speed category. That was exciting for me, which at my age, I feel like I'm keeping up with some of the kids.
Awesome. Yeah.
I podiumed at a mountain bike race this year, which was also a single speed race. And then I got on another podium, but which was on a geared gravel bike.
Mm-hmm. And when you're mountain biking on a single speed, is it set up as a fixed gear, or are you able to coast?
Oh no, I don't do fixed gear. Those people are nuts.
Well, I was trying to figure out how you could be mountain biking and going over routes and stuff without the ability to coast.
Yeah, I have a free wheel.
Got it.
It is single speed, but it is a free wheel, so I can get my my crank arms parallel to the ground before, so I don't have to worry about root strikes or rock strikes.
Yeah.
The people that are able to do that well on mountain bikes, fixed gear on mountain bikes, that's an incredible level of skill.
Right. Well, I would say what you're doing is an incredible level of skill, because you don't have that advantage of, clicking your gears. You are just, here's what I have and I've got to go for it.
Yeah. I think I'll let you in on a little secret that single speeders don't necessarily want other people to know, because we enjoy the respect we get from other riders, but it's not as hard as you would think. And I think there's quite a few single speeders that would probably agree with me that single speeding is actually faster. You're forced to go hard when you need to.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't slack off, because then you lose too much momentum. It gets that much harder. If you're always riding single speed slow, it's actually more difficult than if you choose the right gearing and you can turn those pedals. That's not to get to certain steep bits. That isn't very hard. But a single speed, when you've got the right gearing, it forces you to pedal efficiently, and it forces you to work on the hills. So your times, a lot of times, are quite competitive with
Interesting.
geared riders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like what you just said is I need to invest in a single speed bike. I think that's what you
Yeah.
just said.
Do it. Yeah. Why not?
Um,
They really are a lot of fun,
yeah.
especially single speed mountain biking. I like being in the woods because they are so quiet. You don't hear a chain slap and
Oh, yeah.
things like that. Yeah, it's really nice.
Huh. Interesting.
So,
Any other cool, crazy experiences you want to share?
I think anytime on a bike, I have a lot of fun, and it hasn't been a crazy year this year. This year was actually one of my lowest miles. I just got really busy with work and a little bit of a funk, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't ride as much as I usually do this year. But I guess the best part of the year was I know we're not out, and we all are or should be doing what we can to make sure our communities are safe. But it
Right.
was great for that window that we had that events were going off and you could see your
Yeah,
bike friends and compete and do the right thing. It wasn't normal,
for sure. Yep.
but it was getting there. And
Yep.
hopefully we'll be closer to that next season.
I agree completely. Well, you mentioned when we first started that you are into doing farming and that you create farms for, I don't remember how you said it, but you're doing farming for nonprofits. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So my wife and I, about 15 years ago, decided we wanted to become organic farmers.
Hmm.
It's a very hipster thing to do. So we decided to hop on that bandwagon, and we wanted to do it right. So we left our career jobs and ended up apprenticing for farmers,
Nice.
so we could learn it properly. So our first home together as a married couple was actually I think it was an 8x12 tool shed with a mattress thrown in there.
Wow.
So we did that for 3 years, making about $4 an hour, with dreams of buying our own land and starting our own farm. And when it came time to buy land, we realized, oh, we can't afford to buy the amount of land that we would need to be able to support ourselves and grow food properly. So we decided to look into managing farms. A friend of ours heard about our ideas and recommended us to a prep school that was building an agriculture program, had a bit of land. And so they hired us and not gave us a plot. I mean, we were living on the plot of land. And we were tasked with building a farm for them and developing a sustainable agriculture program. I have a background in teaching and teaching internationally, and the school had a lot of international students. So I think that with my farming background really, they felt it was a good fit. So they brought us on, and all of a sudden we were farmers with resources and healthcare, and it seemed to be a good thing. And we built a farm for them, mixed agriculture. We had an oxen team and raised pigs and chickens and bees and goats, and then all sorts of organic vegetables.
So
And we're teaching about it.
So yeah, I was going to say, so you're, building this farm from the ground up with the organic process, but then are you also, like, the students are hands-on right in there with you?
Yeah, for about 8 hours of the week, we'd have students out there.
Oh,
So
okay.
throughout the summer, kids go home in the summer.
Yeah.
So they were helping us in the early spring as well as into the fall. But summer, it was my wife and I maintaining that farm and selling to any product that we would create would be sold into the local community. So we did that for about, I think that was 4.5 years. And another opportunity came up in there for a large nonprofit, and they had some land that was given to their foundation, and they decided that they work in education in Ward 7 and 8 in DC, and they decided that they wanted to also help with food insecurity issues. So again, we were moved onto a piece of property with no infrastructure, and we spent the first year building the farm infrastructure and growing. And that first year, we donated 20,000 pounds of food.
Whoa.
And our most recent number is 2020, and we donated almost 50,000 pounds of food that year. So it's a nice way. And this is, we get to farm.
Yeah.
We have a salary, and we have healthcare. It's an incredible place to be as a small farmer. Most small farmers I'm not going to. They're not as lucky as we are.
Yeah.
But the fact that we couldn't buy land forced us to look at other alternatives, and it was working for nonprofits. That works,
Right. So
which
now
is
it's multi.
consistent with our. Yes, we've done that twice now. Two
Yeah.
different organizations. Yeah.
Wow.
And,
So you've
it's a
gone,
weird niche that we found ourselves in.
right. And you've gone so much further than just having a farm for just you two. So now you're teaching and you're providing food to other people. And I mean, there's just so many different avenues that you are going with this path.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's opened all sorts of doors and windows for us to explore further as well.
Yeah. Not to mention great food. I mean, you're probably one of
Yep.
the healthiest people in your neighborhood.
Well, I laugh at that because when we're done in the summer, the first thing we do is come in and eat beer and a bag of potato chips. So,
That's awesome.
yeah. So,
Well,
it's just, I think being out in the sun and losing that salt.
yeah, there you go. Well, what adventures do you have on the horizon for 2022? A quick interruption to give a shout out to Primal Wear. Cycling is their passion and apparel is their craft. So if you're in the market for a new jersey, bibs, mask, or any cycling apparel, go to primalwear.com and use code PRIMALMURPH to get 20% off your purchase. Yes, 20% off. Now back to the show.
I've been desperately looking to buy a new mountain bike. I think I have a lead
Ooh.
on one of those because I would like to do more marathon-length mountain bike events.
Yeah.
The SM100 is a well-known race down here that I did last year on the single speed, and I've decided that that's a bit too much for me next year. So that's the one I'm really excited about this year. Our trip to possibly Costa Rica, which we need to plan in the next month or so, is another exciting thing. And just being out there and seeing, we've got quite a few VeloPigs now that race, so we're launching a VeloPigs race division. We've got kits coming out soon, so it's going to be fun seeing VeloPigs, which we already do, but seeing VeloPig racers at events. Yeah, I mean, the future of cycling, for me at least, is looking great. And I hope that more people are finding that and enjoying it like so many of us have found.
For sure, yeah. And the VeloPigs ways to connect and get more information. Of course, you did say that you have a website, but the Facebook page is that open to anyone who wants to join?
It is a private group.
Okay.
But basically, you would request to join. There's one or two little questions, and you'll be approved. I hate to say it, but in this day and age, you have to kind of, when people request, I need to do a little look over their profile and make sure it's not certain things on there before I invite people in. We are very inclusive of all people. So I don't need anybody in there trolling or being negative to certain members that we have in our group.
Yeah, that's much appreciated for probably everyone who's in the group. But okay, last question. How did the name come to be?
So Velo, obviously, cycling.
Yep.
I wanted something that wasn't boring. Like, I don't know, we were living in Kent at the time, so I didn't want it to be the Kent Bicycle Club or, the Kent Rough Ride. I don't know. I just didn't want something like that. And I was raising pigs at the time. I really like pigs. And then I thought the pigs that we had were friendly and they just were very happy and just gobbled up everything they enjoyed. And I thought, oh, that's kind of quirky. VeloPigs. It's kind of has a ring to it. People will remember it. It's fun. So I just mentioned it to my wife and one or two other friends, and they kind of agreed that they liked the name.
Yeah.
Part of it, when we first started, is because I've always liked growing up with punk rock music and hardcore and do-it-yourself T-shirts and all that. So I wanted to make T-shirts. So part of it was built around that would be a cool thing to play with. As far as
a logo.
Logos.
Right.
Yeah. So I think we've come up with a pretty good one. And that's how, when I got down here, I was selling T-shirts with just our logo on it, and at VeloPig, people asked about it and they bought a T-shirt. And there was a bit of a buzz about the VeloPigs before there was really a VeloPigs down here.
That's awesome.
So, a bit of the old early 90s guerrilla marketing.
Yeah. And it was successful. Look at you now.
It seems to be, yeah. We've got 1,300 people that claim they're members now. So.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah.
Well, Kasey, thank you so much for coming on the show to tell your story. And before we go, is there anything or anyone you want to plug before we say goodbye?
Well, the VeloPigs wouldn't happen without Plum Grove Cyclery in Leesburg.
Okay.
So if you're in the area, definitely check them out. If you're interested in riding gravel in Loudoun County, I love to play tour leader. So feel free to reach out. If you look us up on social media.
Mm-hmm.
My Instagram is the Mad Rocket. The Instagram for the VeloPigs is VeloPigs. Look up at our Facebook page. But if you want to see what Loudoun County gravel is like, definitely check out the America's Roots homepage. There's quite a few videos about cycling on these roads, about the history of these roads. There is a video on there that has won an Emmy Award for about our roads. So that one's a really beautiful, well shot and interesting film. So check out America's Roots, Plum Grove Cyclery, and say hello to me on Instagram at the Mad Rocket.
Excellent. And I will try and put most of those links into the show notes. So if people haven't written them down while they're listening, then they can just read and hopefully click and check it out.
This writing it down while they're listening makes me feel like I'm failing when I listen to podcasts, like I've missed out on the assignment.
Well, I'm like usually on my trainer or driving, so I don't have access to write things down. So you're right. So, all right. Well, Kasey, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great talking to you, Kathy.
Well, listeners, that's it for this week. Thanks, Kasey, for coming on to tell us more about VeloPigs and what cycling is like in Northern Virginia. Be sure to check out VeloPigs on most of the social sites and also at velopigs.org. That's VeloPigs.org. Their Halloween Century ride called Oink at the Moon sounds like a blast. Oh, and if you go to YouTube to watch Kasey's film on his 23-hour fundraiser ride, you can search Loudoun Rambler to find it, and that's Loudoun. Email me at murphologypodcast@gmail.com if you have a topic or the name of a cyclist you find interesting. Support my podcast at patreon.com/murphology. Visit my Instagram for daily entertainment and check out my website for all kinds of bicycle stuff. And a quick shout out to Simmons Electric for sponsoring this episode. I'll leave you with this quote from the Unwritten Book of Murphology. This quote comes from Oscar Allardyce. New beginnings are in order, and you're bound to feel some level of excitement as new changes come your way. Think about it.